Hello, everyone, and welcome to the People Strategy Forum. Today's guest tells leaders what they need to hear, even if it's uncomfortable. Traci Austin, founder and chief talent officer of Elevated Talent Consulting, is renowned for transforming workplace cultures in construction and skilled trades. She blends decades of HR leadership and real-world field experience and delivers specific strategies that work on the job site, not just in theories. Her mantra is stop complaining, stand up and sell yourself. Stop bitching and start pitching challenges leaders to own their own role in retention, culture, and performance. With her trade-tailored tough talk, I think you have a tough talk blueprint, Traci,
Correct.
and I would love to hear more about that. But Traci coaches field teams and communicates clearly, how to communicate clearly, how to lead consistently, and hire for the right fits. So if you are a workforce and you have your workforce in the trades area and want clear tools that drive retention, culture, and trust, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. And so welcome, Traci.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. Well, it's great to have you on the show. And I think that one of the big things that I would just love to everybody to get to know you a little bit more about who you are and how you help your clients. So what got you into the helping people in the trades specifically, Traci?
I think it was by accident. It's one of those where it was by accident, yet sometimes, I think things fall in because of what you grow up in, right? So, I grew up, my mom was in HR and my dad in construction running a GC. So there you go. It just kind of, fell in that way. And, as I built my career, I actually spent my first 10 years in nonprofit organizations building HR departments from the ground up. And then after that, really went into a lot of consulting roles. I took a wrong turn at Albuquerque for me. And when I got my nursing home administrator license, let me tell you, staffing and culture in a nursing home is so much harder than it is in trades. I'm just going to name it, right? It's very different. And the compliance pieces are so different. However, what I love about trade organizations is there is it's real. It is, we're not going to play a lot of games. There's a lot of work to do. It moves really fast pace. And when we can truly be honest and transparent with each other around what is needed, how we build things together, guess what? We're able to hit those. And, sometimes we don't communicate very well. And so much of what we focus on is the communication, the definition of what good looks like or whatever that is, and expectations with the team, which means our teams are working much better together. And that's really fun.
Yes, that's super important. As you mentioned, I think one of the biggest things that organizations have problems with is clear communication, expectation setting, and how to create their managers, how to help their managers be successful in their role. I mean, I think is huge. But we're really talking about problem solving, right?
Yeah. It's really about problem solving, and it's paying attention to so many of the things that aren't said or done, right? I mean, so many of the clients we walk into, it's like, hey, this person's an amazing worker. We're going to promote them to a people leader role. They are awful at it. And we do not give them any tools in order to be successful at it. We don't know what the measures are for it. And so much of what we're doing is we're creating a people strategy for the organization to hit the organizational goals, especially for growth, that aligns with the individual talent pathway plan so that each person has some idea of what do you want to do. Guess what? Some are never going to want to go beyond swinging a hammer. And some are going, yeah, but when I get to a certain age, I don't want to be doing the physical labor anymore.
Right. So let's get into the topic at hand. And this is, I know this is all related, but I want to make sure that our listeners understand how this is connected. So when we're talking about stop bitching and start pitching, what is the main intent of that?
Yeah. So the main intent of that is every complaint is just a poorly worded request. So if we think about that, you think about you walk out, you hop in the truck and you're out on site. What are you hearing? What are those complaints? Typically it's so and so didn't show up on time. This truck didn't show up. It put us behind. I can't believe so and so isn't doing this. This one doesn't know how to read a tape measure. And now I have to train them. I mean, you tell me the complaints. I'm just listing out the complaints I hear. And those complaints don't create a work culture that, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in that culture all day long. Yeah. And here's the thing. Every complaint is a poorly worded request. So what request are each of those complaints actually asking for? And you know what? We are horrible at requesting what we want.
So it's a matter. Yeah. So it's a matter of taking that complaint and reframing it into what is really the core issue here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so what are the most common things that you're hearing right now from leaders? I mean, what are they bringing as a complaint, and what is most common that needs to be solved?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a number. I think we can all agree that staffing is an issue right now. Our labor force is growing by 0.4% per year, 0.4%, not even a full percentage point, 0.4%. So that's one. Another one is, I think there's a lot of fear around AI, but guess what? In the trades, AI cannot go run wire. AI cannot fix a plumbing leak. AI cannot do any of these things that we need in the trades. Therefore, it's really looking and saying, okay, how do we train folks in a way that we can bring them in that has transferable skills and train them and build a career pathway for them that they actually want? So that's one. Another one that comes up quite frequently as well, folks are leaving jobs every 3 years to every 7 years, depending upon what statistics you look at. It's 3 to 7, right? So does that mean I have to just plan on rehiring every 3 to 7 years? Absolutely not. What it does mean is you need to create a new career, so to say, for that individual within your organization every 3 to 7 years. So when we change our mindset around what these things are, now there's tons of solutions, but we have to believe that the solutions are possible.
Right. So let's talk about a particular scenario. So there's a manager comes to you and says, "Hey, this, I'm so frustrated that my staff, I mean, 3 of them are not showing up on time every day, and when they do show up on time, their attitude is just caustic. I mean, I'm afraid they're going to chase other team members out of the area." So how do you reframe that?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for that one, because it's much clearer than like no one wants to work anymore. So yeah. we have some specifics here. And the thing that I love about what you just brought forward is we have some facts. You gave me some facts. So a lot of times I hear no one wants to work anymore. And then I'm digging for, well, what are the facts around that? So the facts you just gave me are, we have 3 employees that have attendance issues. So I'd want to get into what are the facts around those attendance issues? Like, is it they're showing up late? Is it they're not showing up at all? What are the facts around that? And then the attitude piece. And so, within that, my question back to you is, well, what is the best result that you want if we were to work this problem?
Yeah. So what I would say is that it would be great for everybody to show up on time. So they're not putting pressure on other people or creating bad habits among the team. And then also if they have a more team element or can communicate effectively, then everybody's work will be, everybody will have a little bit more fun at work. They'll be able to do their best work instead of trying to avoid this person on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to go back a little bit here to go forward. And there's typically 5 levers of employee engagement that we look at. So the first lever is fit to role. So my first question is going to be, is this person in the right role for them? Right. And so, are they truly in the right role, whether it is they're in a trades role or they're in a laborer role, right? Are they in the right role? And there's a number of ways we can figure that out. But then the second question is, are you, Sam, as a leader, leading them the way they need to be led? So is there clarity around when they're actually supposed to be at work? And I have to tell you, it is so interesting to me how many times it is not clear what time I'm supposed to show up and where, especially on job sites when I'm at a different one every other day and different job sites start at different times. So sometimes it is on the leader and sometimes it's 100% on the employee. So we're going to dig into that, right? So is the leader leading them the way that they need to be led? That's lever 2. Lever 3 then is the team that they're on. Are we turning up the strengths of each individual on our team to get this project done? Or are we just playing whack-a-mole on all their weaknesses? Because when we're playing whack-a-mole on weaknesses, it is not fun for anyone. And yet it's kind of like complaints, right? We know how to make complaints. We don't always know how to make the requests. And sometimes that request is really clear expectations. It's kind of looking almost like that SMART goal framework, right? Of how much my accountability equation is how much of what by when, right? So do they know what the expectations are when they're at work? And you can use that same accountability equation in attitudes. And we'll talk about that in a second. So we have fit to role. We have leader leading them the way they need to be led. We have, is the team aligned to turn up each other's strengths? And then we have culture. And culture is those core values piece, right? And so when we're looking at that, those values may be integrity in trade organizations. It may be, that highest level work, the quality, right? So whatever that core values are, is that someone's personal core values? And if those things aren't aligned, we're dead on arrival, right?
Yeah.
And then the fifth lever, and this is one, from an HR background, we need to be careful with this, yet we're human and we really do need to pay attention to it. And I call this one seasons of life. So, we know there's a mental health crisis right now. We know there's a lot of those things going on. I'm not saying give a free pass. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is when we're aware of what's happening, we can pay attention to what that is. And so is the individual that's showing up late, is it because there's, parental issues back and forth and there's a childcare issue? Is it that they're living paycheck to paycheck and the vehicle they had died and they don't have transportation to work? So these are things when we get curious to know what's going on, doesn't mean there's a free pass. It doesn't mean there's a lack of accountability. It does mean that there's empathy and sometimes a little bit of support to get them over that, which means you're creating trust. And when you give your team members something, a lot of times they're going to give you more back. So I went off track a little bit here, but I wanted to talk about those 5 levers of engagement before we got into solving the problem.
No, I love that. I mean, and part of the problem solving thing is to dive deeper as a manager, right? To really understand the core issue and not just saying, hey, you need to be here at 8:00 every morning and quit being a jerk. I mean, some of that is not so constructive, right? I mean, we need to really dig in and see what the core issue is and ensure that we're having an effective discussion with our employee, getting to know them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just, I coach a lot of mid-level managers, and I was having a conversation with someone. And this is actually an exercise that I do at the beginning of every single one of our leadership development programs. And we were chatting this morning about connecting with team. And she's like, this person's really quiet and I just don't know. And I said, well, what interests them? Like, what personally interests them? She's like, I don't know. I go, well, have you asked them what their spirit animal is? And she starts laughing. I'm like, no, seriously. I'm like, do you remember in our leadership development program? She's like, yes, I do. And I said, so when we went through that in our leadership development program, what did you learn about every single person there? She's like, it connected to their personality in weird ways throughout the course. I said, yes. So I mean, I've had spirit animals that are a mule or a sandhill crane or ducks or whatever. And when you ask folks why, it tells you what's important to them. So sometimes it's what are the quick rapport building things we can do with our team members that really allows us to get to know them. And yes, that one's a little wacky and off the wall. However, you just had a shared experience of something you can always go back to and build upon. And it tells you something about them without actually asking the direct question.
Very powerful. Yes, definitely making sure that we're listening and using creativity and how it can deliver things and kind of make things a little bit more comfortable in those discussions, right? When we're taking things at a different angle.
All right. So what's your spirit animal, Sam?
My spirit animal? That's a good question. So I never really thought about what my spirit animal would be, but I like birds. It's like, as you imagine, it's like, to be able to fly up high, see things from a high level, and then also come down to the ground level and deal with those tactics from time to time. In also getting away, right? And that sense of freedom. And so I think that maybe a bird would be my spirit animal. I'd love that. But what about you, Traci?
It's a macaw.
Macaw, a bird also.
Is a bird, yeah. And it's so funny when you said bird because most people don't say birds, but it's a macaw because one, they talk back.
Yeah.
And they typically name, what's going on, like I just had this core childhood memory of we're on vacation and this, I think it was a parrot, not a macaw, but it just kept saying, it's not fair. It's not fair. But also, again, like the flight you can see above. And I love connecting the dots and making, the complicated simple. And that is something when you can see above and connect those dots together. But also a macaw is very, very vibrant and colorful.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's just something I really connect with. So.
Yeah, I love macaws too. I mean, I actually had a pet macaw when I was growing up, and so but I never knew that they can also take your finger off if you
put it
in their mouth. That strong beak, right? So
there's a fierce streak to them too.
Yeah, I still have all my fingers. So anyway, that's a great exercise. And so, what are other ways that you use to really get the inspire problem solving in your leaders that you're coaching or in your workshops?
Absolutely. So that first step, like we said, was and I'm going to go back to kind of that tough talk blueprint because it's a lot of what we kind of go into, but it's, identifying what the problem actually is and then looking at the facts of it. And so often when we look at facts, we have our stories wrapped in here so tightly that your story is not a fact, right? A fact is there's a video camera on your shoulder that is giving you back exactly what happened without any story to it, right? Mm-hmm. Or it's the numbers, or it's what those things are, right? So if we think back to, how do we lead and get to some of the results with, this, I'm going to boil it down to one person versus the three, and you do the same process for all three, but having those conversations and setting expectations is something really, really important. And we use in our leadership classes something called the accountability dial. And it's from the book by Jonathan Reynolds, The Good Authority. And what I love about the accountability dial is you're mentioning something. So that first time I may say to someone, you're in front of me, Sam. So, hey, Sam, it's 11:20. We had our job here to start today at 11. Everything okay?
Yeah.
And again, the whole purpose of the mention is a personal check-in. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it's open-ended. So you can say, Traci, the car broke down this morning and I didn't have X, Y, or Z, or blah, 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 blah. Okay. So now I have the opportunity then to make a request, right? And if there's a lack of trust between the employee and the manager, they're not going to make a request, right? Now, as the manager, I may say, Sam, I really want to support you to be successful here. You know, what's needed with your vehicle, right? So now we're starting to have a conversation and we're problem solving together. I'm not solving the problem for you, but I'm creating an opportunity for us to get a win-win together. And sometimes that looks like, hey, Sam, what do you want out of the conversation? Well, I want to be here on time. I can't right now. Okay. I also want you to be here on time. Maybe there's something we can come up with together.
Yeah.
So everything we're doing is mostly collaborative, but it's also in a coaching framework. And so that's that mention. And then the invitation might be the next time you come in. Hey, Sam, it's 11:20, we started 20 minutes ago. What's up? Right.
Yeah.
So now we're raising that awareness. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then that third piece of the accountability dial is the conversation. Here we're looking for impacts, but we're not going to do it in a blame and shame and judgment. And so often, like when I first start working with organizations, all they know is you didn't show up on time, we can never trust you. Like those kind of words come out. Yeah. And it's like, oh, wait a second. Right. Because what we're doing is we're making the person bad versus the behaviors bad. And we're not getting curious about the behaviors behind, what's going on. So if I say, hey, Sam, I want to have a quick conversation about attendance and really kind of look at what this is. I'm curious when you're, 20 minutes to half an hour late, what do you think the impact is on your team?
Yeah.
And I don't talk. What do you think the impact is on, the client, whose site we're on this morning? And I don't talk. And if they're like, so, when we have trucks sit where they can't do their work because we're not here, that costs them $1,500 an hour between their crew and their truck. Right. So with you showing up a half an hour late, you just cost our client, $750.
Yeah, put it in perspective pretty quickly.
Right. So what do you think the impact of that is on our organization? Oh, well, maybe they won't use this again, right? So what we're doing is we're not giving the answers. We're asking the questions that forces the critical thinking. There's no judgment here. We're not blaming. We're not shaming. We're bringing forward facts. And the distinction of getting a behavioral change is sticking with the facts and creating the opportunity for the critical thinking. And then it may look like, so what is it? Do you want this to continue to happen? And the answer is typically no. And if it's like, well, I don't know, then it's okay. Well, guess what? We're now in a boundary conversation as this can no longer happen. And here's what's going to happen, the limit, if this does continue to happen, right? But when we work these through, what we're doing is we're starting to do knowledge transfer and we're also building trust. And when we start to build that trust, we're getting the light bulbs to come on versus just you did it wrong, you're awful, blah, blah, blah.
Excellent. Yeah. So that was a great scenario of how to handle the situation and really bring awareness to your people with great care and also with that degree of I guess that the degree of constructive harshness, right? You're putting in the framework in place. You're not blaming. You're enabling that person to really think about that, what happened and how to solve it effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So these are what your workshops are all about, with helping managers really do their best work, helping to have successful teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So our leadership development program is the main workshop that we do. And this one's focused on, what's the distinction between a manager and a leader?
Yeah.
Right? Like, a manager is going to tell it where a leader is going to sell it. Right. Mm-hmm. So do we need both? 1,000%. But knowing when to turn it on and off. We look at accountability. We spend a lot of time on accountability. We talk about what is coaching, right? What are these curious questions? That scenario we just went through was very much coaching, where, we're coaching that individual to come up with the answers on their own versus us saying, what it is, which there's times you do need to go there and do that. But there's also many times where when we can slow down a little bit, we can actually speed up for them.
Nice. And then, so when you have these workshops with new managers, what is the most, I guess, most important factors that make them successful upon leaving the workshop?
Yeah. So there's a couple things that we've put in place over time, based on trial and error, right? Like the first time you do anything, it's like, oh, well, that just half worked. And then the second time you're like, well, that was a lot better. And so the things that we put in place over the last 2.5 years with this are: one, we get the feedback from the folks ahead of time along with their direct manager. And here's why. What we know from research is that 70% of the learning happens on the job. 20% of the learning happens collaboratively with another person on the job. 10% happens in the classroom. If we don't tie together that classroom training with the on-the-job training, with that mentor on-the-job training, we're going to fail in the classroom training. And so we do a pre-survey with both the participant's leader and the participant, because I want to know what that leader believes this person needs to focus on. What I'm really looking for is what's the gap between the leader believes and the person believes. And there's typically always a gap. I share the information both sides with the leader. I do not share it with the participant. That is not my job. That's the leader's job to have that conversation, right? So, but we'll have conversations about that. And then we do the same thing at the end. And then we do the same thing 6 months later. So we're truly seeing the progress from both the individual's perspective and their leader's perspective. That's one thing that really sets these apart. The next thing that we do is accountability is huge. And we know that if we don't create accountability, work gets really, really busy and we get pulled off. So we have our training calls early in the week, and then we have a coaching call later in the week. Therefore, you're making a commitment to everyone in that room what you're going to work on throughout the week, which is typically, hey, I'm going to try this conversation, or I'm going to pay attention to, passive aggressive, assertive communication. And, I might act on that this week, or whatever that is. Right. And so within that, we've got our coaching calls later in the week, and that's forcing the behavioral changes to happen during the week. The next thing that we do is we always recommend, and I haven't quite required it yet, but I'm close, is that a minimum of 2 people must be in the trainings. And here's why. Is it's really difficult as a new leader to go back and implement something if it's against the grain of what's currently happening in the organization. And so, by 2 folks going through the training, 1, they're building a much stronger relationship together, but 2, they're then bouncing things off of. So when they're in a project manager meeting, or they're in an estimating meeting, and one person is bringing up, a different communication style, the other one can back them up. And so those are the things that we do within these courses that really produce the phenomenal results that we receive out of them.
That's great. Now, one thing that I learned just recently from the SHRM conference, the SHRM conference that was a couple weeks ago now, is that one of the main drivers, or things that are on top of mind of many HR leaders across the United States, is learning and development this year, which is different than many other years. And I think a lot of this is being driven by just the amount of sheer change that we're seeing in the workforce, and new technologies and things like this that are coming out. But when you think about the trades and nonprofits and so forth, sometimes learning and development is not the first thing that's on their mind. Do you often see this?
Yeah, and I think when you think about, okay, if there's recession happening or any of these others, what's the first thing that gets cut?
Yeah,
it's the training. But yet, if you look at the job post right now, do you know how many internal trainers and coaches are being hired right now? It's significant. And I believe that this is coming from our job market is growing at 0.4%. Therefore, if we're not focused on retaining our current team members and elevating them inside of our organizations, we know that there's not enough people coming in. And if we don't have an organization people want to be at, it is going to be much more costly for us. So I definitely see this as a key trend. And the reasons behind it, I believe, are really, really good.
Great. Well, this sounds really exciting, Traci. And I know a lot of our listeners are wondering, it's like, when is your next workshop? When is that?
Our next virtual workshop starts September 23rd. And then those sessions are held Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays is 2 to 4 in the afternoon. And that's really specific, right? A lot of times you're done with your work at that point in time. If you're working a 6 to 2:30 schedule, we're central time. So it plays with that. And then those are on Fridays, is that second piece of it. So that's one way to do that. We also have something called our Tough Talk Blueprint, which if you're interested in that, we can drop that link so that you have that if that's something that you're interested in, which really walks through the 6 steps that I kind of covered on how to actually have this tough talk.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, Traci, for sharing your perspective on how to become a good manager and have those critical conversations for good problem solving. I thought that was really, really helpful in how you put this all together. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. For all those that are joining in, I recommend you reaching out to Traci. And Traci, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah. So we are at elevatedtalentconsulting.com, or we are also on LinkedIn at Traci Austin. And we have a newsletter that comes out weekly that really talks about leadership in the trades and different things that you can do to implement. I think this week's newsletter talked about peer accountability and how you build that with your team.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. And to all those listening in, we'll see you next week on the People Strategy Forum. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Take care.